Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. The NBA draft deadline is here, and we got some very marquee decisions. Going to break them all down. As I said, we're recording in real time. Jackson Robinson has not made an announcement yet. Coleman Hawkins has not made an announcement yet, but we're just going to kind of react to these. Again, I was pre-recording hours of content for next week. I don't have a ton of notes. This is just all stuff off the top of my head. Let's start with what I deem to be the single, I can't say it's the biggest announcement, but I think it's in the short conversation for biggest announcements, and that's this. Mark Sears, all SEC guard at Alabama, was Alabama's leading scorer. As you probably heard, Alabama made a Final Four this past year. Well, he was on the fence. He entered the NBA draft, and just moments ago, well, maybe about an hour and a half ago, as we're recording here in real time, Mark Sears, the star guard of the Alabama Crimson Tide, has officially announced that he is coming back to play college basketball for one more season. And it leads to one very simple question. Are the Alabama Crimson Tide, with Mark Sears back, now officially the number one team in college hoops 2024, 2025? Let's go ahead and dive in. By the way, Jarin Stevenson is another player for Alabama that has tested the NBA draft waters. My guess, this is not official, but I have been told that it's a matter of if not when he officially announces that he's coming back. So let's go ahead and dive in. Mark Sears, first of all, really good college guard. Okay, so this was a kid, second year at Alabama, and really was really a breakout player kind of on the national scene. First year, really good at Alabama, transferred from the MAC. If you remember, Nate Oates as a head coach started at Buffalo in the MAC. Well, Mark Sears started his career at Ohio, transfers to Alabama last year in that SEC title run of 2023 with Brandon Miller, with Jaden Bradley, averages 12.5 points per game. This year, he averages 21.5 points per game, helps Alabama to the Final Four. Ultimately, to me, first of all, this decision is not all that surprising. Mark Sears is a really good college basketball player, but if we're being perfectly honest, not a ton of NBA upside. It's worth, not that there's no NBA upside, but you're talking about the difference between being at best a second round pick, at best probably being the 11th or 12th man on an NBA team, and the opposite is come back, be a star college basketball player in the SEC for a team that's good enough to win a national championship. I'm not saying that it was an easy decision because I don't know if it was, but in this NIL world, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. By the way, Mark Sears did have an injury at the NBA Combine, which hurt him. And so I just bring it up because it's kind of a no-brainer. In this era, when you can get paid to play college basketball, come back, be a star, be the big man on campus. It really is, to me, like not that tough of a decision. But again, I'm not here to say that I know what's best for Mark Sears or what I say Mark Sears should do is what Mark Sears should do. But when you have the opportunity to come back and be the face of an SEC team that's good enough to win a national championship, kind of seems like a little bit of a no-brainer to me. And apparently it sort of was, by the way, for Mark Sears. And he kind of referenced that in his return to college basketball. He told Jonathan Givony of ESPN, quote, NIL has changed college basketball, and NBA teams told me that age isn't a factor in today's game. So I was comfortable coming back to try and bring home a national championship to Alabama. So how about that? And then, oh, by the way, producer Matt just sent me this tweet from someone named Mark Torrance. I apologize if I am not familiar with your game, Mark Torrance, but he tweeted that as of right now, as of 8:12 Eastern on May 29th, 2024, Alabama has better odds to win the national championship in basketball than it does in football next year. Now, that's not a shot at Kalen DeBoer. That's not something that's me saying that I think it just speaks to what Nate Oates has done with this program. So when I look at Mark Sears returning, I'll be honest. I said when Alabama got the commitment of Cliff Omoyori, I said, I believe that if Mark Sears comes back, and Jarin Stevenson too, but really Mark Sears, if Mark Sears comes back, I believe Alabama is my preseason number one. I have not veered from that. And if anything, it has only been confirmed over the last couple of days. Now, I think you can certainly argue for Kansas, but in my opinion right now, Alabama is the number one team in the country. Let me explain why. First of all, you have a bona fide star in Mark Sears. 21.5 points per game, 43% three-point shooting. And I've said this a lot, but being at the Final Four, for people who don't know, the media, we can go in, we have pretty good media access. Go into the locker rooms, talk to the players after the games, before the games even. And I remember after the UConn-Bama game, in that, Final Four semifinal game, I remember going into that locker room with UConn, and whether it was Hassan Diarra, whether it was Tristan Newton, Cam Spencer, everybody was exhausted. And everybody was just saying, man, oh man, that kid right there was as good as anybody that we played all year. So Mark Sears is back, and look at what is around him. First of all, I think it's kind of interesting to note, Alabama, really, believe it or not, and this sounds counterintuitive to a Nate Oates team, Alabama really wasn't a great three-point shooting team this year. They were good. They were not great. 36.5% shooting from three. A year ago when they won the SEC, it was right around the same, but they obviously had a lottery pick in Brandon Miller. But Mark Sears shoots 44%. But why I bring it up is because look at what Nate Oates has done this offseason. Brought in two elite shooters this offseason. Chris Youngblood, a guard from South Florida, really good. He was the AAC player of the year, shot about 42% in the AAC, shot 5 threes per game, so he can get buckets. And then Houston Millette, a transfer from Pepperdine. So you have those two guys. Latrell Wrightsell was probably the best three-point shooter on that team last year, 44%, but he missed some time with injuries, missed 6 games with injuries. Well, now he's back. So you really have 4 elite shooters with Mark Sears. You have Grant Nelson who comes back. Grant Nelson, of course, was a tournament just hero, for lack of a better term. He had in that Sweet 16 win over North Carolina, I joked he kind of looked like Larry Bird in that game, 24 points for Grant Nelson, 12 boards. And then he was really the one that carried Alabama against UConn along with Sears. 19 points, 15 rebounds in that loss to UConn in the national semifinals. So I bring it up because you now have a core. Mark Sears at the point. 3 really good shooters around him. A stretch 4 in Grant Nelson. You also, as I just referenced, Cliff Omoyori, the transfer from Rutgers. 10 points, 9 boards, 3 blocks per game. And if you watched Alabama this year, the three-point shooting was pretty good, but that's improved. But the one thing they were really missing was rim protection. Remember, it was right around this time last year that they kind of got a shock when Charles Bediako announced that he would not be back. I don't think Nate Oates was really planning for that. And so that was the one thing that Alabama didn't really have this past year. Didn't have great paint presence, didn't have great defensive paint presence, but that changes with Cliff Omoyori. And now you have much better spacing and three-point shooting with the transfers. Also bring in Aiden Holloway to back up Mark Sears. You bring in LeBaron Philon, the 4-star who was committed to Kansas, and the 2 other McDonald's All-Americans, Darian Reed and Aiden Sherrill. I just listed like 10 dudes that could all play, maybe even more. And so you look at Alabama. You know what Alabama is? Alabama is Noah's Ark. Alabama has 2 of everything going into next year. Ball handlers, three-point shooting, center, backup center, spacing, shot blocking, whatever you need, Alabama has it. They also have, in my opinion, as good of a coach as anybody not named Dan Hurley in college basketball right now in Nate Oates. And I think it's okay to be excited if you're an Alabama fan. Bluntly, it's obviously a wild sport. A lot of stuff happens. And look, there's other really good teams. Outside of the SEC, Kansas is really good. Inside of the SEC, Auburn's going to be good. Tennessee's going to be good. Arkansas is going to be good. I'm higher on Kentucky than seemingly anybody. But when I look at this Alabama team, they are, in my opinion, the favorite. I don't know if they're going to be the favorites in Vegas. I don't know if they're going to be the betting favorites when all the odds officially come out. But when I look at this team, I see a team that has everything that you need to win a title. They now have veterans. I think that's another important thing. Every single year, we increasingly understand how much importance is placed not only on veterans, but guys who have been in the system, been there before. It's just really hard to win when you're bringing in 8, 9, 10, 11 new players, whatever. And so you have the veterans who have been there, Grant Nelson, Mark Sears. You have the high upside guys. You have the low post presence in Cliff Omoyori. You have the 2 freshmen. You have the 3-point shooting in Chris Youngblood. You have the 3-point shooting in Houston Millette. This is going to be a fun team. This is going to be an awesome team. And I'll be blunt. This is not only the SEC favorite, in my opinion, they will be, barring something shocking, my preseason number 1 going into next year.